device to success, to market. And he worked with Mark Richard and Ed Chang, who I interviewed 2 Sundays ago. Go and watch that on my YouTube channel under LC Co. There's a whole slew of videos for you to watch. But what's different about Jeff Hall, who I'm going to be bringing on shortly, he first of all, he is the co-founder of Avenu Medical, and he is now the CMO of Aveera Medical. And he was instrumental in bringing together a an invention that he was not the only one who thought of creating a fistula using just needles, wires, balloons, and a catheter for dialysis patients. But he has a very special story, a different background that I think we can all learn from as physicians of how we do this. How do we go about our lives and make things happen? Um, Incredible story. So, without further ado, let's bring him on here. Jeff,
Good
thank you so
morning,
much for
Elsie.
being here, Jeff.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, let's start off by talking about what is it that you invented and what makes you different about how you got this to market?
Well, what we invented was the sutureless anastomosis, and that left nothing behind. It didn't have a stent, didn't have any clips or anything in it, and that was the neat challenge. And the first application for that was the percutaneous fistula, which was sort of an ideal place to start. But we're hoping that there's additional life in this concept. So, and it's something I was always interested in from back in medical school when I actually was training in surgery initially. And Duke is very unique in that you spend your second year doing research, and that experience of working with devices and developing on the bench and in animal models, and then bringing them to use in humans is just invaluable. So there's not necessarily a lot of schools that do that. So that was really, really helpful. So it just sticks in your mind over the years. And now how this is different from what other people do, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but what I thought was very interesting in your story is that you did not go through an interventional radiology fellowship formally. I mean, you had the opportunity. You told me that that person passed away before you could even do it. And you think you kind of had to learn your way. Let's talk about that. How did that really shape your mind
Right.
into
So
thinking
yeah,
about?
that's a really great thing because you know um, uh, life kind of catches up with you. I had a Navy scholarship and I was supposed to do a fellowship, and then um, they said no, you need to come on now. And of course, I ended up at the Naval Hospital as one of the main interventionalists for 4 years, and it had a sort of OJT. But one of the things that I didn't have as not having a formal fellowship was I didn't have the central dogma. There wasn't like, well, this is how we do it. It was like
Right.
anything that came up is like, well, what's the best way to do this? And you had to look it up, and you talked to a bunch of people, and you resourced, you figured it out and tried to get the best way of doing things. So,
You had a growth
but
mindset, Jeff.
yeah,
You were forced into it
right.
to figure it out yourself.
And that's what I
Go
like
ahead, sorry.
anyway. Yeah,
You're like that anyway.
right.
Yeah, we're not won't get shaped that way in training though.
Yeah.
So go ahead, sorry.
No, no. So that's really a key attribute. You just take nothing for granted. I think um, dissolving like the central dogma for anything is always a very useful starting point for new ideas.
Yep,
There's so many things we take for granted.
right. The next thing is people might argue and say, "You know what, Jeff, you were just at the right place at the right time, and somebody was there to take your idea and run with it." I would say that's completely false. I mean, there might be times there is opportunity there, but you persisted and you pushed Mark to do this. Can you talk about that?
Well, I always like to say that every interventionalist has a great idea of something that they want to develop, and the there is an element of meeting the right people at the right time. But I can remember giving Steve Parker the elevator pitch, and it was like, Jeff, just talk. You got 5 minutes to sort of explain this, and so you have to be able. And that was 2 years
You have to learn how
before,
to pitch.
yeah, before they signed on. And you have to you have to convince really smart people who know stuff that you've got a good idea. So it's and I think what I see a little bit is someone will go out and patent something and not really develop, somebody to work with. You really it this is like a moonshot. Your
Mhm.
chances are 1 in 100. You got to get a really good team together.
Right. So let's talk about how you've seen a lot of physicians come up with ideas and yet they don't want to share. Like you said, every interventionalist has an idea. What are your thoughts? I mean, Mark talk about don't share, but I think he's talking about once it's already established that you have a team and you're going for it and you've done all this background research, you know what the problem statement is, but you're talking about even way before that and you have this idea. Can you talk about how that is vital to your success?
Yeah, I think early on when you have an idea, you have to talk with people about it. You have to talk to people that, really would have the skills to sort of take your idea. But, you know, it takes a tremendous amount of money, minimum $30 million to bring something to market. So they'd have to work really hard and invest a ton of money to steal your idea. So unless they're a company that you're going to trying to get them to pay you for your idea, if you're thinking about really doing it, they're gonna. No one can really compete with you. You've got a huge head start. So I think Mark made a good point. You don't. It's who you talk to and how you talk to people, but I think the idea is, oh, I'll just go to, big, large medical company and tell them my idea and they'll love it. And the funny thing is, I actually went to Medtronic, I think in 2006, and talked a little bit about, this sutureless anastomosis thing. And
Wow, really? I didn't know that.
I know, yeah. Um,
What happened?
well, they just like, hey, thanks, great idea. Thanks so much. See you later.
I don't think you want to hear about that now,
Right,
Jeff.
right.
Okay. So thank you for talking about that. So what was your contribution you think to the success of this company and how much are physicians really how are they really important to the success?
Okay. So, I was kind of thinking about that a little bit. It's like if you're going to design an airplane, you need to have pilots. So what do we have that other people just never get? One is it's the science of medicine, but it's also the human side. How do you interact? How does this device improve the lives of patients?
Mhm.
Um, Nobody really knows that like a physician does. I mean, we're managing risk every day
Mhm.
where we're saying, hey, you should be vaccinated, or hey, you should have this. But there's always another side to it. And you just can't replicate that. So, I think that's a super important aspect of what we do. And the, and then there's a whole bunch of other skills that each person has individually, like what you're doing. It's like I could never do, podcasting, even though I,
Yes, you can. You got
but
a
you know what
growth
I'm saying.
mindset.
You know,
Yeah, I know
but
what you
you know what
mean.
I'm saying. It's like one thing to think you can do it, and it's another thing to
Mhm.
actually do it. So
Right.
I would put that as an example. And but we do have a unique position in the medical device world. But you can't don't overestimate it. Once everyone figures that out, there's a million other science, uh, financial, regulatory, reimbursement. There's a million other things that need to be worked out to come up with a successful project.
Right. Then suddenly you aren't the main honcho in the group.
Yeah, physicians hate that.
No, it's learning to be humble enough to say, "You know what? I don't know all the parts to this. I'm part of the team." My name is Elsie. You can call me that. It's
Right.
different when
Well,
you're with a
and
team.
you don't wanna do it all. I mean, like reimbursement, I mean, just
Yeah.
stab my eyes out. I mean, it's just mind numbing, all the some of
So
the
Jeff,
stuff.
how does somebody find partners like that once they have an idea? They've shared it with their friends. People really resonate with it. You might have gone to Medtronic and asked, and they said, "What a great idea! What do you do next?" How did you find that person? How did you find Mark and Ed?
It was, through a friend who had worked with them before. I said, "Hey, this is a good idea. We ought to, tell Mark and Ed about it." And then Mark and Ed were looking for a project, and I think they had looked at 40 or 50 other things. Sort of like Shark Tank. Uh, you kind of get in line, put your idea up there, and then uh, if it's big enough and solvable. And those are important things that I think we forget a lot. If you solve a really small problem, it could be super clever, it could be a great idea, but you got to think about, all right, even that little, something that's only works in 5,000 people ever. How do you monetize that? How do you pay for that? And that's where, um, I mean, I think Mark and Ed spent 2 years, vetting the idea out.
Right.
Just saying, is this a real problem? Is this a real idea? Is there really a market? And um, they that was super important, very thorough work, and not something that I think most physicians think about.
Yeah. So, how did you convince them to finally go forward with your idea? I mean, Mark did mention on the last podcast, and I encourage you guys to go and look at it on my YouTube channel. Um, is how did you get them to finally buy into it? Because he said for a couple years, he said, "Oh, it's a great idea. Let me think about it," and really didn't do anything further than that.
Well, once we got to know each other a little bit, I realized that they had the capability to really make this happen. And um, so, maybe a little persistent. You got to sell, always be selling. Isn't that the word? Even though I'm really not particularly extroverted or necessarily good at that, I chide them sometimes. They say, "Well, marketing is really important." I said, "Well, I kind of talked you into this idea. I've got the ability to do that." And it's on a scientific basis. It wasn't, "Hey, you're going to make a lot of money," or da 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 da. It's like,
Right.
this is a real problem we're solving.
Yep. Yep. And that says a lot about the people that you ended up working with because you attracted them to you. They really think about the end goal and how they're going to be able to help people. So I love that. But you said something very important there, and I think all physicians should learn some male to not for I can't think of a better word, but marketing and sales is so important to what we're trying to drive forward in healthcare. We need to have that lingo, the communication skills to be able to, like you said, pitch that, have that one liner to be able to sell your idea. And it's not about selling to get more money, it's selling to get a quality product to help people.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, kind of like the pilot analogy we had before, you're responsible for the safety of the patients. If you that going forward. So you really want to come up with a really good and safe device. You want to make sure it has attributes that are going to help you do that. A lot of people are going to be using your device, and you want to make sure that it's a good one.
Yep.
Uh,
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, for being on this podcast with me. How can people reach out to you if possible? Is it their
I,
LinkedIn?
you can always email me. So we could show that email, and be happy to kind of talk with people. People talk to me about this stuff all the time, so I'd love to do it. It's really exciting.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your story and helping us physicians become better in what we do. If you have an idea that you want to talk about it on this podcast, please reach out to me at info@drlcco.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you're also interested in leadership training, go to leadphysician.org to find out more information. Jeff, what any last words of advice for us, for our audience?
Well, I think, like, you know, like we talked about, do what matters to you, and stick with it, and enjoy, and try to make the world a better place. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's our job.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Until next Sunday, see you at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care.